Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay. This is R.L. Stine. I'm happy to talk with you today on Facebook about my new TV series, R.L. Stine's Haunting Hour, the series, which premieres Christmas night, a very good night for scary stuff. After all, I was thinking the scariest the Christmas story, the most popular Christmas story of all time, is a scary story, right? A Christmas Carol. So I think that's a perfect night to start the Haunting Hour on the new Hub TV network. And we're going to be on every Saturday night at 8 o'clock for many, many weeks with new creepy stories, two different stories every week. Christmas night, our story is called A Creature Was Stirring, and it'll be followed by a show called The Dead Body. So I'm very happy to be on the Hub, very happy to be on television. This is the book that the stories are based on. It's called The Haunting Hour, of all things, and it's published by HarperCollins. And a lot of the stories on the show were taken from this book. And now I'm looking forward to talking to you and answering your questions. So fire away, ask me anything. And now I'm looking for questions. And first question, how do you come up with your stories, both for your books and the Haunting Hour? I don't know. I have a trick, and that I guess it helps me. I don't know where the ideas come from. I never know. And that's the most asked question. Everybody asks me, where do you get your ideas? And I always want to say, where do you get your ideas? Because we all get ideas, right? But I usually dream up a title first, and that really helps me. I think of a title. Maybe I'll be walking the dog in the park, and a title will flash into my head. Say cheese and die. And up there it is. Where did it come from? I don't know. But then I start thinking about it. What if there's an evil camera? What if there's a boy who finds the evil camera? And most titles that way. I had a Goosebumps Horrorland book called Little Shop of Hamsters. Where did that title come from? I don't know. I just popped into my head, and then I started writing a story for it. So that's pretty much where it is. Haunting Hour stories are a little creepier than Goosebumps, and I think you'll find the TV show a little creepier too. Keep them coming, Whitney. Keep the questions coming here. What kind of stories will we see on the Haunting Hour? Well, you're going to see some stories from the book. The very first one you're going to see, A Creature Was Stirring, is my very first Christmas show. I never did a Christmas show before, and it involves a very unhappy family who gets a visit from Santa who leaves a present maybe they shouldn't open because there's something pretty hideous inside the box. And I'm not going to give away any more, but that's basically what that one is about. Then there's one called Nightmare Inn, about a girl whose mother is buying an old inn, and she has to stay in it overnight, all by herself. Well, she isn't exactly all by herself. There happens to be a werewolf living in the inn. Now, those are a couple of the stories. What else would you like to talk about today? I'm reading here. Next question. What advice can you give aspiring young writers? Well, I have very boring advice for aspiring young writers because I think if you're really serious about being a writer, you already know you want to be a writer and you're already practicing, you're already writing because you like it so much. Take me, for example. I started writing when I was 9 years old. I don't know why I found it so interesting. I was this weird kid sitting in my room, typing all day, typing out little stories, typing. I just loved it. I don't know. I just knew I wanted to be a writer, I think, when I was 9. My mother would be outside my door and she'd say, "Go outside and play. What's the matter with you? Go outside and play." And I'd say, "It's boring out there." And type, 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 type. I'd be in there typing away. And I think if you're really a serious, aspiring young writer, you have that same feeling and you don't need my advice. All right, who else has a question? This is very strange for me. I'm just staring at my own face, trying to open my eyes. I haven't opened my eyes in 20 years, so this is a little bit odd. We're in my office in New York City, and in my apartment, I have a very good commute to work. I go from one room to the other. I love working at home. The only problem is, of course, it's a little too close to the kitchen. I use, a type of good paragraph. Say, good paragraph, Bob, and go into the kitchen for a reward. So that's not exactly a good thing. But this is, you can see in the background, I think you can see some of my books. And there are many, many books. This is some horror movie posters and a lot of creepy stuff in my office. I have a skeleton and a lot of eyeballs and a lot of atmosphere. Put me in the mood for writing haunting hour type stories. Was it difficult to adapt the stories to the screen? I don't know because I didn't do it. I read the scripts and I make a lot of comments and um, try to make sure that the stories reflect what I do. And I've been so happy with it. They take my story. It's very exciting for an author, I think, to see what somebody else they take your work and they go off in different directions with it. And I love that. I love that whole process. I love seeing what other people do with my stories. And in some ways, I think the TV show is scarier than the books. I always used to think, well, it's scary if you see things in your own head, you imagine it yourself. Um, but, if you can actually see the monsters, and we have some pretty creepy monsters on this show, there have been some I've seen 5 or 6 of the Haunting Hour shows already, and some of them are pretty terrifying. What else have you got for me? I'm happy my dog is being quiet for some reason. I have a dummy of myself. It looks just like me, and I was going to start this off with the dummy, but the dog hates the dummy. She hates it. And she was barking so loud, I decided maybe it wasn't a good idea. Have I ever had creepy experiences happen to me? That's the next question. Thank you for that question. You can't have too many creepy things happen when you stay in a room typing all day. And people always say, have you ever seen ghosts? No, never, not yet. I keep looking. I never have. I guess one of the creepiest moments recently, I was in London and we visited the Tower of London. And down in the basement of the Tower of London is a real torture chamber that really they use to torture people. And it's got the rack and it's got all kinds of thumb screws and really gruesome things. And that gave me just standing there where people were actually tortured, um, gave me the creeps. It really did. Because this was real. This was not any kind of book. And but it did give me the idea for a Goosebumps that I wrote called "A Night in Terror Tower." I got the idea just while I was standing there in the torture chamber. So that was good. I do want to tell you I'm working on some new Goosebumps books and a whole new series called Goosebumps Horrorland, and I hope you're enjoying those. I'm doing 6 more for next year. So I enjoy doing that as well as working on this new TV show. Your stories have been brought to life in movies and on TV before. What made you decide to return to? Well, somebody asked. That's all. I think everyone wants to be on television and have their stories out and get them to more people. And to be very serious, I think television is a great force for getting kids to read. Kids who see The Haunting Hour on television are going to want to go buy the Haunting Hour book and read the stories. I know this from experience. A lot of people say, oh, television is bad for kids. They watch television instead of reading. And I just don't believe that at all. I think television is a great motivator for getting kids to read. I know when the Goosebumps TV show was on, as soon as it had been on for a few months, the circulation, the sales of Goosebumps just skyrocketed by about 1 million a month. And that was all due to television. So I'm very happy to be back, and I'm very happy to be on the Hub. And the Hub is run by Margaret Lesh, who's the head of it, and she was at Fox Kids when we did Goosebumps. And we had a great time then, and we're having fun now. And I'm really happy to be back with everyone. What's a good first book of mine for young readers? Someone says, I've got 4 kids. The older kids love your books. I want to hook up the younger ones with one of your favorites. Which one? Um, there are some that are less scary than others. I know this because, I had 2 nephews back at the height of the Goosebumps days. My 2 nephews, Sam and Dan, and they were both 9 years old. And one of them loved Goosebumps. He thought it was hilarious. He just loved it. And the other one, Sam, he hated it. He was terrified. And he didn't want any part of it. So I used to send him some. I used to say, Sam, this one isn't very scary. This is a funny one. It's not a scary one. I think you'll like it. And he used to call me up. He lives in New Jersey. And he used to call me up and he'd say, Bob, you know where this one is going? Right in the garbage. Right. He didn't want any part of it. So anyway, there are a couple that aren't quite as scary as others that I would recommend. One is called Egg Monsters from Mars, and one is called The Cuckoo Clock of Doom. They're not very scary at all. I also would recommend, hold on, is somebody calling me? I also would recommend my other series, Rotten School, which is just funny. It's not scary at all. It's just crazy about this horrible, rotten school. Um, Hold on 1 second. I can't talk now. Didn't count on that. Anyway, that's the answer to that question. What's my favorite horror story, urban legend? What inspired me to start writing? What inspired me to start writing were these incredible comic books when I was a kid. The EC horror comics, Tales from the Crypt, and The Vault of Horror. And I just love those comics. They were bloody and gruesome and just really disgusting. I loved them. And the art was fabulous. I'm sure you've seen some of them. And they were all really horrifying, but they had funny twist endings. And I think they were the biggest influence on me of all. When I was 9 or 10, I discovered the short stories of Ray Bradbury. And I just couldn't believe them. They were so imaginative and so creative. And he turned me into a reader, I think. I had a wonderful experience. I actually got to meet, you don't always get to meet your heroes, but I got to meet Ray Bradbury a few years ago at the LA Times Book Festival on the UCLA campus. And he was sitting in a booth at this book festival eating a hot dog. And I thought, oh, I have to say something to him. I just have to tell him how important he was to me. But I was terrified. I was like a kid. I was so nervous. And I went up to him and I said, Mr. Bradbury, you're my hero. And like an idiot. And he shook hands with me. And he was so nice. He said, well, you're a hero to a lot of other people. And it was just such a wonderful moment. I could barely speak. It was really terrific. Are there any similarities between The Haunting Hour and Goosebumps? Well, yes. I think you have the same kind of suspense, the same kind of scariness that doesn't go too far, but it's just creepy enough. The kind of scariness the whole family will like. I think your parents will like it, the kids will like it. And it has a humor that I try to put into every story. I think the Haunting Hour and Goosebumps are very similar. And of course, the productions are very similar. It's live action and some really wonderful child actors and other actors. Some people you will recognize, I'm sure. And there are great similarities. What's next? What have we got? A few people asked where they can find the hub. Well, that's a good question. I've had people ask that to me too. What you do to find the hub on your TV, you go to www.hubworld.com and then click on a thing called Channel Locator, and that will tell you where to find the hub. And I hope you'll check it out. There are a lot of other great shows too, and a lot of shows. A lot of my Goosebumps readers from the '90s, a lot of shows they'll recognize from their childhood. I'm on Twitter now every day, and I get to talk to a lot of my old readers, and it's been really wonderful. They're all in their 20s and early 30s now, and I really enjoy talking to them. I've had a great time on Twitter. I hope you'll check that out too. Okay, how come you choose to create stories for kids rather than adults? Um, Kids are a great audience. They're the best audience. And I get kids the last time in their lives they'll ever be enthusiastic, which is wonderful. They love authors at that age, and you hear from them. You know, adults don't have time to write to authors. They're too busy. But kids do, and I get tons of mail and tons of emails, and I have such great close contact with my audience that you don't get when you write for adults. So people ask me that a lot, but I love this. My whole career has been writing for kids, and I love it. I have to say, though, I am taking some time out. This really hasn't been formally announced, and I am going to write a really creepy horror book for adults next year. And we'll see if people go for that too, just for a change of pace for me. How long does it take to write a book? Well, the Goosebumps books are 120 pages, and I write 10 pages a day. So that's about 12 days of writing. I write every day. I treat it like a full-time job. I'm just always here, right at this desk, writing. And I do a full outline of every book before I write it. So that takes time. It's a chapter by chapter outline, and it tells everything that's going to happen in the book. And that takes about a week. And then it takes maybe a little more than 2 weeks to write the book. And then another week of revising. I do a lot of revising too. I have some very tough editors, including my wife. My wife is one of my editors, and she's a very tough editor. Nothing ever gets past her. And so I would say that, the whole thing takes maybe a month. If I have a really good idea and can go with it. And it takes about a month, which is fine because I've been doing 7 new Goosebumps Horrorland books every year. So that works out very well. I love the story about the evil fun park. How did you come up with that? Well, I'm a really big Disney World fan. I love it. When my son Matt was younger, he and I used to go to Disney World maybe 3 times a year. He was a little spoiled maybe, but all right. My wife got sick of it. She wouldn't go with us, but we would go down there. I mean, I just love Disney, and I always thought, wouldn't it be great to do a park like Disney World, but make it really scary? And that's why I created Horrorland. And I got to put in all these really creepy rides, and there's a one-way bungee jump, and there's a doom slide where if you about 8 slides in a row, and if you pick the wrong one, you just keep sliding forever, and a lot of creepy stuff. And so that's been a lot of fun for me writing about Horrorland theme park, the scariest place on earth. What was it like creating a scary story set around such a happy holiday? A creature was stirring. Well, as I was saying, the most popular Christmas story of all time is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and that's a ghost story. So I think ghost stories and monster stories are perfectly appropriate. And after all the Christmas celebrating, I hope you'll be ready for a good monster story. I was in LA earlier this week, Actually, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I was a judge on a Food Network show that's going to be shown next Halloween. And I flew back and they were showing Dickens' the Disney Christmas Carol from last year on the plane. And I'd never seen, I wish I'd seen it in 3D, but I'd never seen it. And I thought parts of it were really horrifying. I was very impressed with it. I know it didn't, I don't think it did that well, but I was very impressed. I thought it was pretty scary. And who has another question? Anyway, I hope you'll check it out. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Hub on Christmas night. You began your career, oh, someone always has to embarrass me. You began your career writing joke books. Would you ever consider returning to humor with your books? Um, well, there's a lot of humor in the books. I wrote about 100 joke books for kids, and no one really noticed. And I did a humor magazine for 10 years called Bananas for kids. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, that's all I ever really wanted to be. I wanted to be funny. I never really planned to be scary. And then I wrote my first scary book. It was a teen novel called Blind Date, and it was an immediate bestseller. It just took off. I'd never had a bestseller. It was like #1 on the Publisher's Weekly bestseller list. And I thought, wait a minute, what's with this scary stuff? Maybe people like scary stuff. So I tried writing a few more, and they were also big hits. And I decided, well, okay, I've been scary ever since. Um, but I don't want the books to be too scary, especially for the younger kids. And so what I do is I put in a lot of humor and a lot of teasing. There's a lot of teasing in these books. And I try to make them funny as well as scary. How do I come up with the living dummy? That was just another title. I mean, for some reason, people think dummies and puppets are scary. We did some kind of survey, and I mean, Slappy the Evil Dummy is the most popular character I ever created. And I always wonder why people are so afraid. The very first Haunting Hour show, which was shown last Halloween, was about a doll, a girl who gets a doll, and the doll is actually alive, and the doll starts taking over her life. Did you see that one? That was the Halloween one with a wonderful young actress named Bailey Madison, who was just fabulous in it, and this very creepy doll. People are afraid of dolls and puppets. Maybe, for me, I think it goes back to Pinocchio. Pinocchio is one of the first books I remember. I remember my mother when I was tiny and had to take a nap in the afternoon. And having her read Pinocchio, maybe not a very good choice for a little kid, because it's a very violent book. In the original Pinocchio, he takes a big wooden mallet and he smashes Jiminy Cricket against the wall. He just flattens him. And then later, Pinocchio falls asleep. I never forgot this. He falls asleep with his feet on the stove and he burns his feet off. Maybe this started me off. Maybe my mother didn't know it. She started me off on my horror career. But that's basically why I created the living dummy in Slappy. He's my favorite character to write too because he's so rude. He's really great. He's really great to write. I don't always get to write such rude characters, and that's a lot of fun. What kind of books do I like to read? I read a lot of mysteries and a lot of thrillers. I'm in this group called the International Thriller Writers, and we meet a whole bunch. 350 thriller writers meet every summer. That's a lot of fun. I read a lot of old mysteries, and I like British mysteries and old British novels, and a lot of current guys I read. I don't read any nonfiction. I don't like anything real. I only read fiction. I don't want to know anything real. I mainly stick to read. Some woman said that I was reading beach reading. That I read beach reading all year round, and I guess she's right. I guess she's right. More questions. How are we doing here? I think we're doing very well. And the dog is still quiet. She's lying in the doorway. When you're not busy scaring kids with your books and haunting hour, what do you like to do in your spare time? Spare time, what is that? I don't know. I live in New York City. There's a lot to do in my spare time. We love the city and we do everything here. I just like walking around in the afternoon. I finish writing in the afternoon and I go walking around and take the dog to the park and you just see such amazing things. And we like going to the movies and the theater and to the opera and we do everything in New York. Go to the Yankees games and the Giants and Jets and I love the city, and that's believe me, it takes up your spare time very easily. When you're not busy scaring kids, same question. What kind of dog do you have? She's a King Charles Spaniel. I don't know if I can show you or not. Hold on. No, she left. She's a ruby kind of King Charles Spaniel, the red brown one. Her name is Minnie. Minnie, where are you? Where's Minnie? I don't know. It's not too interesting. What do we have? Do you have a favorite story you've written? Well, that's kind of hard. I've written, what, 330 books. Oh, thank you, Jane. Here's Minnie. Okay. Very folksy today. I think we're a lot folksier than scary. What do you think? Yeah? She's been very good today. As I say, I like The Night of the Living Dummy. There's a story in The Nightmare Room. It's either in The Haunting Hour, this book that the TV show is based on, or I did another book called The Nightmare Hour, and there's a story in there that I wrote called I'm Not Martin, which I do not think will be part of the TV series. It's really disgusting. I probably should be ashamed of this story. You'll have to check it out. But that's one of my favorite stories that I ever wrote. It's really horrible, horrible thing. And there are a few other Goosebumps books that I'm very proud of. One is The Haunted Mask, the Halloween story. And I think that's a really good one. And the very second Goosebumps book called Stay Out of the Basement, about this father who's slowly turning into a plant. That's one of my favorites too. There's one of my favorite scenes is he takes off his baseball cap and he has leaves growing out of his head instead of hair. I always thought that was pretty creepy. Is there anything I want for Christmas? Yeah, steady your nerves, I think. I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm heading off to St. Croix for some beach time, and that's what we do at Christmas time. I already have my beach chair picked out and a lot of books to read, and I'm going to lie by the ocean and soak up some sun, and that's what I plan to do. And not type for a whole week. That's like a thrilling vacation for me. Christopher wants to know, where can you get the book at? Well, the Haunting Hour book. Bookstores, you can order it at bookstores. Try to find it at bookstores, and you can get it online. It's a real book. It's everywhere where they sell books, and I hope you'll track it down. I'm waiting, waiting. What do we have? This is very weird. I have to say, I'm just staring at myself this whole time. I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would. But here's another question. What was your inspiration for the book where pianos turn deadly? Oh, piano lessons can be murder. Thank you for the question, Angela. Um, that book started out, that's about a boy who takes these piano lessons, but he keeps hearing music being played on the piano in the middle of the night, and he goes down and he sees hands, just hands floating over the piano, hands playing this like a ghost playing the piano. that book started out actually as Guitar Lessons Can Be Murder, because my son Matt was taking guitar lessons, and that's how I got the idea. I thought guitar lessons can be murder, and I started writing out this thing, and everyone said to me, well, guitars aren't scary. There's nothing scary about a guitar. And so I changed it to piano lessons, and I think somehow hands playing a piano is much scarier than a guitar. But that's how that book got started. Margaret Lesh, how nice to hear from you. Which is your favorite haunting hour? Well, I have to say I love the one that was on already, the Really You about the doll. I love that one. And I love the one about the red dress, which is coming up. There are a bunch of them that I like. And the Christmas one as well. It has a great monster in it. I love the monster in A Creature Was Stirring. I'm looking forward to seeing that one again, actually. And now an uncomfortable pause. Natasha asks, why did you write so many books that include Slappy and puppets? I was just talking about that, Natasha. I watched a Goosebumps film when I was a kid. I was scared for years after. Well, that's great to hear. Thank you. That's wonderful. I don't really know why people are so terrified of dummies. To me, they're, it's just a little dummy. Here, I'll show you the dummy of me. Here, what do you think? Think he looks like me? He's got the little black costume. He's got, I don't know, maybe he looks a little younger than me. The dummy mini me, we did a introduction to a Goosebumps TV show together, the two of us. He was actually a little better than me. I was a little stiff, but he was pretty good. What do you think? You see a vague resemblance? Anyway, how would you like to stare at this all day? I have two dummies here in my office. I have me and I have Slappy, the dummy. Okay, we got 10 minutes to go here. Who has a question for me? Who has a question? It's a quiet Friday afternoon. Jane, would you like to chat? No, not at the moment. Let me see. Do you think this series is a little scarier than Goosebumps? Yes, I do. I do think it's scarier. It's just a little bit edgier and a little bit darker. After all, it's the haunting hour. So these are stories that should be told at midnight, right? And so they're a little bit darker. And but I still think, I think the whole family is going to enjoy it. They have some funny ones coming up. There's one right from the book called Alien Candy, where a kid joins, he's sort of a lonely kid, and he joins a club at school called the Alien Club, but I think he's made a very big mistake. And there's one where a girl steals a red dress. It's called the red dress, and she has no idea what she's in for. That's pretty scary. These are all coming up really soon, and I hope you'll enjoy them on Saturday nights. What does it take to really scare you? Do you have any? I've always wondered. Oh, that's just another question. Horror doesn't scare me. I think maybe I'm weird this way. If I go to a scary movie or I read a scary book, it always makes me laugh. Doesn't scare me. I'm always the one in the theater when the shark comes up and chews up somebody. I'm the one who's laughing. I don't know. It doesn't scare me. I don't get scared. I always see. I think there's a very close connection between humor and horror. When you go to an amusement park and you go up to a roller coaster, you always hear people screaming and laughing at the same time. And I think there's a very close, there's two emotions that are very close. And I always think of my stories is sort of like a roller coaster. Um, because when you get on, you know where you're going, you know there's going to be a lot of twists and turns, but you know you're safe the whole way. It's not going to go too far. It's going to be really exciting and fast, but then when you get off, you'll be okay. And that's what I think my stories are like. I do have a phobia, but it's very boring. I have to think of something good, a good answer to the question, what are you scared of? Because I'm always asked that question, and I've never had a good answer for it. I have a phobia about swimming pools. We have a swimming pool. I cannot jump into a pool. I can't dive. I can't jump. I have to climb in. I have to climb in or take the stairs. I have a phobia about jumping into a pool. And all my son and my nephews, they just think that's hilarious because I'm supposed to be the scary guy and I can't even jump into a pool. I've always wondered this since I was a kid. What does RL, well, see, I love the easy questions. What does RL stand for? And I have to tell you, it's just my name. It's a very boring. It's Robert Lawrence. That's it. Robert Lawrence. And kids are always disappointed. You know, they wait up and they say that question, say, what does RL stand for? And they expect something kind of creepy or interesting. And then it's just my name. How do I like the special effects in The Haunting Hour? To me, they're fabulous. The doll, and that was very simple special effects. The doll in Really You, it was very scary, and very well done. And also, as I've said already, the monster. I love the little monster in this Christmas show for Christmas night. A creature was stirring. I think you'll like it too. I think it's a terrifying thing. It's not very big. It doesn't photograph big, and it's not big. It's not a big monster, but it's really creepy. I think everyone will really like it. More people have asked where they can watch the show. Can I mention again where people can find the hub? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we want you to find the hub, and it's a brand new network, so it's not too easy to find. Here's what you do. You go to hubworld.com. You go to hubworld.com, and you click on this thing called Channel Locator, and it will tell you where to find the hub. Is it exciting having so many awesome stars on the series like Debbie Ryan and Bailey Matt? Well, yes. Yes, I love that. And I had a list of all the great people. I mean, these are all people you will recognize who are on these shows. Ariel Winter was on Modern Family and in Speed Racer. And who else is on the list? Madeline Carroll, who was in The Spy Next Door. And Madison Pettis is a real favorite of mine because she was in a TV movie of mine a couple years ago, which maybe you saw on the Disney Channel, Mostly Ghostly, based on my Mostly Ghostly books. And Madison Pettis was in it, and she was terrific. And she was also in that film with The Rock, The Game Plan. And she's in A Haunting Hour too. So we're getting a lot of good people, and I think that'll appeal especially to kids. Can I reveal any of the titles for the next 5 Goosebumps Horrorland books? I'm just curious. Yeah, if I could remember them, I could. Next Halloween, I just finished one for next Halloween called The 5 Masks of Dr. Scream. And right now, right this morning, I'm working on one called Why I Quit Zombie School, which I think is my first zombie book ever. And the very first one for next year is called Claws. I'm a dog person, as you can see, so I like writing about horrible cats. And the first one is called Claws. What's my favorite horror movie? Well, I guess I like Evil Dead 2, just because it's hilarious. You've seen Evil Dead 2, right? With the eyeball scene, the flying eyeball. I love that. I guess it's not a quality horror film, but that's my favorite. I guess for a quality horror film, I would have to say The Shining. I think that's a really scary movie. What time does Haunting Hour premiere? On Christmas Day, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the Hub. And then followed by one called The Dead Body, which is based on a story from the Haunting Hour book.